It appears as though we're live. I'm going to give folks a second to hop on because we got started a tad early.
Only a tad.
Only a tad. Less than a minute early. Because if you're not early, you're late.
I had a mentor who told me, if you're not 15 minutes early, you're late. And I have said him frequently.
15 minutes is a bit early,
yeah.
for sure. For sure. All right. Well, why don't we just jump in and get started here, and we'll just go from there. I'll just trim off the beginning of this video, and then we'll be all set. Greetings, Dr. K here. On this channel, I help ambitious individuals end self-criticism with tools and strategies to create optimal everyday mental health. And this series is a live stream series called Conversations with Dr. K, where I bring people on who have a real grip and a real understanding of mental health and self-criticism. And today I am beyond honored and excited to introduce to you, my viewers, a good friend of mine and somebody who we went to medical school together, Dr. Jamil Sayegh. This is going to be epic.
Hey, everybody.
So, Dr. Jamil, why don't you give us a quick overview of who you are, what you're all about?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, man. This is such a privilege and an honor to be on your show, to see your great setup in the back. And I hope people get a ton of value out of this. So for everyone listening, just like Dr. K, I'm also a licensed naturopathic physician here in the state of Arizona. And for the past 14 years, I've been a transformation coach, and that's been my deepest passion, my mission, my purpose. I want to end suffering for as many people as I possibly can. And I really want to wake people up to the reality of their life. Most of the time we're in our head, we tell ourselves these stories, and it causes so much pain, so much suffering. And we're really suffering our own, the thing we make up. And so really helping people to wake up, end suffering, and create an extraordinary life on their terms, with the key being without regret. That's what I'm all about.
That's awesome. And that's what we're going to dive into today, is creating that life without regret. So I've come to realize over the years that, all of us become who we are because of the experiences that we've had over the course of our lifetime. And when I see certain people who, you're just somebody that just lights up everybody around you. You're just one of those people that just brings energy. And I was always curious before we talked about it, what made you this way? So why don't you share with us your origin story?
Absolutely. So I was born on a planet called Krypton, and my parents said, no, origin story.
I've heard this before.
Into superheroes. Oh, I love that, though. The origin story, I agree. I think that, what we've been through brings us to this moment, and it makes us really who we are. And so for me, I grew up in New York. I'm in Arizona right now. And for me, my story really started when I was 14 years old, and I was a track athlete, never really ran a day in my life. my friend tells me it'll be fun. So we go out there, and I notice over the next several months that not only my track times are really poor, and my diet, and I was getting sick all the time. And I didn't know why. My energy was low. Even though I was sleeping, I was tired all the time. And it didn't really make any sense to me. And I reached that point, that enough is enough point, which I think oftentimes we get there. And I know on our last talk, we mentioned, when it hurts bad enough, that's when we take action. And I know with myself, it was hurting bad enough. I was wondering, I'm going to practice just like everybody else. I'm putting the work in. I'm not getting any better, and I feel like garbage. And I thought, there's got to be something. There's got to be a reason. I looked into it, and I found out it was my diet. And at the time, right now, looking back on my life after being blessed to work with thousands of people, I've had the worst diet I've seen thus far. It's like, other than running, that was my saving grace. I don't know how I'm alive. And so I start cleaning up my diet. Some changes overnight. I stopped doing almost 3 liters of soda a day. I started doing a gallon of water a day.
3 liters?
Oh, yeah.
Per day.
And I cut out per day. Yeah. I was doing fast food like McDonald's and Burger King 3-4 times a week, and a million other things that I was doing that weren't serving me in the way where I wanted to be. And so I made some big changes and I made some smaller changes over time, but very quickly stopped getting sick. Energy went through the roof. I started feeling so much better and my track performances started dramatically improving. And now I'm thinking, okay, I increased my water. I changed some foods I was eating. That's it. I'm like, wow, like the results have been so profound. There's got to be something more. And then over the course of the next few weeks and months, I started looking into what are some other things that I could start bringing into my life? What are some other areas of an extraordinary life? And then I started thinking, well, relationships are one of them. And I wasn't in a relationship at the time, but my mindset was, when I do get in one, I want to do it right. When I do get in one, how is it that some people got married when they were 16 and they're in their 90s and they're more in love now than they were in the beginning? And other people, the relationship falls apart, months in. What's the difference that makes the difference, kind of thing? So I started purchasing all these programs and books from marriage therapists and dating coaches and all these people that were the top in their industry. And I'm continuing to look into health and then relationships. And then I started bringing in mindset work. I started bringing in motivational speaking and inspirational speaking and all these people that were just flooding my mind, my subconscious, with things that I really wanted to emanate, let's say. And it brought me to when I was 19. And at that point, I was truly blessed. I've been able to help many friends, many family members, acquaintances that we met to really build the life that they dreamed of. And at that point, it was more like a hobby. And I really just loved it. I didn't call it coaching at the time, but it's what I was doing. And when I was 19 years old, that's when my life really shifted. I was a sophomore in college in New York, and my father had a brain aneurysm. And for anyone who doesn't know, imagine, one of the blood vessels in the brain, you have this tube, and then it starts to balloon out. And if you're lucky, it's the worst headache of your life. You go and you get it clipped in the hospital and you go home. My dad wasn't that fortunate, and his ruptured, it popped. And it was, pretty much the scariest moment of my life. And I was somebody that I helped get him out of. He was in a locked room, and I helped get him out. And I wasn't even supposed to be home. I had this intuition hit me a couple days prior saying, don't go to this weekend event that I was supposed to go to. And I had no reason not to go. And this feeling was so strong, just don't go, it's not right, something's gonna happen. And I listened to it, and I didn't go. And then that Sunday, when I wouldn't have been home, Dad has the aneurysm. I helped to get him out. And he was in a 4-hour brain surgery. And the neurosurgeon said it was the worst aneurysm he'd ever seen. He put his chances at surviving about 1%.
Wow.
And I remember walking into the room after his operation. And my dad was somebody that was so full of life. He was a family practice doctor himself. And his hobby, his passion also was music. And he was a drummer, and he was also an Elvis impersonator. And he was top 3 in the world. And he called Elvis his golf. He's like, my colleagues have golf, I've got Elvis.
That is amazing.
Yeah, he had the most wonderful heart I'd ever seen in anybody. So full of life. And now I walk into this room after the surgery, and there he is sitting and laying in this bed in a coma, and his head was shaven, which was, even more emotional because the Elvis thing, like the hair, it was his hair. He wasn't wearing a wig or anything. So like the hair was a big part of his personality. So now he's, his head is shaven, a part of his skull was removed. It looks like a train hit him. And he had so many wires coming out of him. And in that moment, I felt two things. I felt this deep sense of helplessness because there I am, 19 years old, and I want to do something. I want to help him, and I can't do anything. And then on the other hand, there was this profound sense of regret. I felt this feeling of, I'm 19 and I've been taking my dad for granted. I'm 19, I had this amazing guy in my life that I didn't spend time with in the way that I could have. I loved him, he loved me, but we didn't have the kind of relationship that I would have liked in terms of seeing him more often and having deep conversations with him and really getting to know him. And I took him for granted in that way. And so now I'm sitting there thinking I'm never going to have that chance. Now we're being told he could die at any minute. And, with grace or whatever you'd like to call it, he survived another 3 years. And in that 3 years, he made almost a full recovery. And we were able to make so much magic happen using diet, using lifestyle, and then using a lot of psychology. He had some short-term memory loss. Being able to take short-term memory, make it long-term memory was something I was so deeply happy about. And then after 3 years, he passed away. that was also unexpected. He was doing really well. And every day for the first year and a half, I went to bed, very emotional. And I went to bed wondering if that was the last time I'd see my dad. And then every morning I'd wake up and I'd kind of be in a fog for a few moments, this wondering of, was that all a dream? And in that state of, is that all a dream? I would walk downstairs and there'd be this hope. Maybe there he would be like getting ready for work, or there he'd be reading the newspaper. And then I'd go downstairs and it wouldn't be the case. And it would be a reminder that life is different now. And in those 3 years though, I got, the gift that I wanted. I wasn't really spending much time with my dad, taking him for granted, turned into every single day, every moment I had with him became such a special gift, because I didn't know when my next one was going to be. So I made the most of it. And him and I connected on such a deep level that he became my best friend. I was spending 10 to 15 hours a day with him and doing everything with him. And it was unbelievable to connect with him in that way. And after 3 years, I had learned so many lessons about myself, about life. I got tested in every way, my patience and everything. There was a point where I remember that short-term memory loss really got to me. And I started arguing with him because he forgot who I was. Mm-hmm. And after taking care of him like 4 or 5 days in a row, my mom and I would switch back and forth, and my sister, and we would try to give each other like a break, a mental break. For anyone who's been a primary caregiver, you know what that's like, and it's very draining in every way. And after me taking a couple days to be with him and then him to forget who I was, it was like getting the rug pulled out from underneath me. And it was really tough. And I guess got challenged in every way, and I grew so much. And at the end of 3 years, when he passed away, I remember being in his wake, and I was standing next to his coffin, and over 7,000 people showed up for a 5-hour wake.
7,000.
Yeah. Over 7,000. The people at the seminary said he broke every record they had.
You need like an arena to hold everybody. Wow.
Yeah. He was 49 when he had the aneurysm, and he passed away at 53. And, most of these people hadn't seen him since he was 49. A lot of them were his patients, people in the community, music, people, all that. And I just remember I stood next to that casket for the full 5.5 hours. I shook every single one of their hands. And almost everyone in those 10 seconds they had with me said, "Your dad saved my life." And people from different cultures and religions were right over the casket asking if they could pray in their own way and do some type of beautiful symbolic, gesture. And it was so humbling and gratifying to see the life he lived, and just getting to have my wake-up call that I've been playing small my whole life. I was a really shy guy when I was younger, which you wouldn't know from SGA president and talent show singing. But I was a really shy guy growing up, and I had this light in me to shine and to give, just like we all do. We all have this unique gift that we can give. And I was so afraid to give it. I cared so much about what everybody else thought. I was afraid of how I would look. I was afraid of messing up. I was afraid of judgment, all these different things, criticism. And there I was during this experience, and it really hit me that I've been playing small, and that none of us know how much time we have left. And when we don't know how much time we have left, and we procrastinate on our dreams, we procrastinate on doing the things we want to do, and we say, "I'll do it tomorrow." Steve Jobs had this great quote: "If you live every day like it's your last, one day you will surely be right." And the thing is, you'll have no idea of knowing when. In those 3 years my dad was alive, 2 of my cousins passed away. One was 20 and one was 21. And if you spoke to these people when they were 15 and you asked them what their vision for their life was, I promise you they didn't think they'd be dead in 5 to 7 years. And so none of us know. It doesn't matter how great you eat, how great you take care of yourself, stuff happens. And so I woke up that day to the life that I wanted to live. And I made a commitment that enough was enough, that I was going to step up. I was going to take advantage of every opportunity. When I was with somebody, I was going to treat them like they were the most important person in the world. And when I had an idea, when I had an opportunity, when something came up that I really wanted to do, I was going to go all in and do it. That was almost 10 years ago. And I know for me, the last 10 years have really been the dream I had 10 years ago. You know, there's so much that I've been able to do and accomplish, and there's so many people that I've been able to help transform, and none of that would have been possible if I didn't go through that experience with my dad that made me who I am today. And so I feel like that's what brought me to this moment, and I feel like that's a good place to pause for now.
That's an amazing, amazing origin story. And every time I hear it, it just blows me away. You know, Jamil, it's interesting when we go through our challenges in life, when we're in the midst of it. I mean, what was it like during maybe some of the darker moments? Like, you've come out a bright, you know, energetic human being who's transforming lives. But when you're in the midst of, let's say, those that 3 year span at its worst, you touched on it a little bit, like when your father couldn't remember you, but were there moments that you kind of came up against the desire to no longer live small, but then the pressure of the moment? And how did you handle those times?
Absolutely. I have many memories of being with my sister and being with my mom, and you know, before he passed away and after, but let's say before, during those 3 years, where we all at different moments would get emotional, and the other person would, you know, be there to comfort us, and sometimes it'd be all three of us together, and maybe my dad was sleeping, excuse me, or maybe one of the family members, you know, took him out for the day to spend time with him, one of his brothers or something like that. And there would be times where my mom is the strongest person I know, and being able to see her really seeming to be okay, like the best, making the best out of it. But then every now and then, some hardship would happen. Every now and then, you know, she would, you know, she's human too. Every now and then she would have that moment where she needed some help. She needed some support. She needed some strength too. And I know there were many nights that, you know, I mentioned that first year and a half, there were many nights where I just, you know, cried myself to sleep. There's many nights where there I was really wanting the moment to be different. And the really only thing you can do in that time is one day at a time. It really is. You take it one day at a time and you do what you can with what you have. And I found that a really profound, simple statement that will apply to everybody listening for the rest of your life, no matter what, is when you argue with reality, you lose. And
I love that.
And when I was in that state, I was arguing with reality because I was saying, this shouldn't have happened and life shouldn't have been this way. But the reality is it did, and it is. And if I sit there and fight it, it's just going to cause me a lot of pain and anguish and suffering. Or I can embrace it and I can make every day as beautiful as I possibly can with it. And that's where I was able to still sing with my dad and still play music with my dad and still go to, he had a, what was it called? A personal training, like personal rehabilitation. And we'd go to rehab, we'd box together, we'd go for walks. And yeah, it wasn't the same. We weren't going for a drive and he wasn't driving, it was me. But it still was beautiful in a different way. And I think that even in that time period, there was so much beauty to be found in that moment. And I always look back at those 3 years as a bittersweet gift, because on the one hand, it's the worst thing that ever happened to me. But on the other hand, it's the greatest gift I had ever received, because I got the gift of myself. Like my father gave me this gift of a 3-year experience that made me who I am today and is the reason I'm able to serve people as powerfully as I do. Because prior to that, I was able to help people, but nothing compared to what I can do now, because we can only take people as deep as we've gone. And
You know what, that's such a good point, because, you know, yes, as trained physicians, we have, especially naturopathic physicians, we have a incredibly large toolbox between, you know, botanical medicine, herbs, and acupuncture, and physical medicine, and mind body medicine. Like, we have so many things at our disposal, and nutrition, to help people get from where they are health wise to where they want to be. However, I will contend that there is nothing that at least I am able to help somebody with, I'm never able to help somebody more than when it's something that I've gone through myself. And especially when it comes to mental health, when it comes to really just anguish like that. And it's the interesting thing is, we spend so much time in this society of ours trying to avoid pain and trying to be happy all the time. Like that's the message, that just to be happy all the time. But the truth is, if life was so good that we were happy all the time, you would never be you. I would never be me. We are forged out of pain.
Yeah.
So what if we could just trust that when we're going through the challenges, going through the really dark days, if we could just trust that there's a reason for this, if we could trust that if I have the ability, I can reframe this whole thing into something empowering, so that when this is over, when this storm passes, and it always does, I will be a better person for it. I will be able to do something that I've never been able to do, to the capacity I've never been able to do it, because of this pain. And it was just beautiful how you said that it was, it was your the greatest struggle that you ever went through, the worst thing that ever happened to you, and yet the thing that made you who you are today. It's this incredible dichotomy that it takes events like that. And the thing is, we all go through them. So why not, like you said, not fight reality, accept what's happened, go through the healthy grieving process as needed, but start to reframe instead of living in a woe is me and defeatist mentality.
I know what you said about the grieving process, so spot on. And I know for myself, Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, if anyone's familiar with her, she was a physician many years ago and would write, she worked with patients in hospice care, people who were getting ready to pass. And she had these 5 stages of grieving. And forgive me if I mess them up, but basically it is denial is step 1. And you can do these out of order, but in general, it's, denial is first, where you don't want to accept it and you don't want it to be true. And then there's anger, where you get, upset about it and you're getting very resistant and you're fighting. Then there is bargaining. Usually that would be like more of a religious connotation, where it's like, God, if you just do this, then I'll do that, something like that. And then there's depression, which is this low. And then the final stage is acceptance. And people can go through these in any order, and each step can take however long it takes. And I found that for myself, my grieving process was very crucial to what I went through, because on the one hand, that mental process of not sure if my dad was going to survive the next morning when I woke up, that was a small version of experiencing his death many times. And there were many times where he was prone to seizures. And throughout the 3 years, there's many times where he had seizures and it's just him and I at home. And he's a 200-pound guy, maybe a little bit more, and he's standing up 6 feet tall, and he just drops having a 5-minute seizure. And I'm holding him, and my phone's across the room, and I can't call 911, and I don't know when it's going to stop. And there was so many moments where it was day by day. And when he passed away, I remember telling myself I did not want to suppress what I was feeling from what I'd been experiencing from people that I knew and from people that I'd heard about. When I had so many experiences of working with people who had deep emotional traumas from their past, and because it was never expressed when it happened, and it's suppressed for maybe 5 years, 10 years or more, it starts to manifest as physical symptoms. And I can go into that in a few minutes, but during that time period, he passed away, and I told myself, I am going to feel everything. And I told myself that if I suppress this and I try to act like everything's okay, and I try to not feel, then I'm never going to process this and, basically surrender to it and make it okay. And so I didn't know how long it was going to take. It ended up being 2 weeks, but every day I had videos of my dad. I had audios of my dad singing. I had pictures. I made him the background of my phone. I looked at him. I listened to him. I heard him, and I cried. And I felt everything I possibly could. I went through those 5 stages very quickly. And At the end of 2 weeks, and again, I didn't set out for it to be 2 weeks. At the end of that second week, I had this wake up. I had this moment of peace where the switch flipped in my head, and I'd start to look at his photo or listen to him sing or talk about him with family members, and I would be filled with feelings of just gratitude and peace and joy because I got to know him at all, rather than I didn't have him long enough. You know, we all can say we didn't have that person long enough, but we had him to begin with. And that to me was that switch. And so now I just started feeling so blessed and grateful for what I had, when I had it, and what it taught me. And ever since that day when I was 22, the way I see people, the way I see life, the way I appreciate just every moment, the miracle that is every moment, it has been such a, divine blessing. And that to me has been, for everything that, we learned in med school, you can't see it, but I probably have like 800 books in this apartment for everything in these books.
I have a selection over here.
Yeah. And this idea that, I learned a lot in school. I learned a lot from these books, but nothing has come close to what I've learned from life experience, and nothing has come close to the impact that 3-year period and the processing after had in who I am and what I do. And I feel like when people go through something, whether it be a death, whether it be a breakup, whether it be you lost your job, anything that you're grieving, it's okay. Like, going through that process and not feeling I shouldn't feel this way. I feel like we grow up in a culture, at least in the US, I'm not sure about other countries, but we grow up in this culture, especially as men, that we get told it's not okay to show emotion. We get told in general, be a big, like, you're young and you're crying, be a big boy, men don't cry. Or they'll say, if you're a girl, be a big girl. If you're going through a hard time and someone says, hey, Dr. K, how's it going? You feel this need to say, oh, it's fine, even though the walls are crumbling, but you feel like they don't want to hear it, or you feel like, you shouldn't talk about it. Now, granted, there's a time and place with certain people and, strangers and stuff like that. But my point being, it's okay to feel what you feel. You feel what you feel for a reason, and to feel it and express it, because emotions are there to be felt. And emotions are like energy in motion. If you don't express it and you suppress it, they get stuck. I've had patients that I've had the real privilege to work with who've had autoimmune conditions, like rheumatoid arthritis is the one I'm specifically talking about, full blown, every joint inflammatory, in pain for 30 years. And everyone else is looking at what supplement can I give, like what medication. And I take it into the mental route, and I find out person was abused when they were a kid for years, and they carry so much anger. Help them process through that, and the RA went away. And it's like, when you realize, will that happen all the time? No. But when you realize that your emotions are more than just these thoughts that just show up, then they leave, and that's it. When we recognize that, all right, I'm feeling this, I'm frustrated, I'm angry, I'm depressed, I'm whatever. Why? Like, let me process it, let me feel it, and that's okay. And I just feel that that's such an important message for people to hear, because a lot of people think that they start crying and somebody says, what's wrong? And there's this implication that something is wrong with you crying, rather than, what are you feeling? I'm here for you. Tell me about it. Let's hold space together.
That's so important, because especially, like you said, for men, but really for anybody, just this idea that I had a patient that we were talking, and he broke down, not something that he was ever used to doing, and he kept trying to stop crying, and he kept saying, I'm so sorry, I'm normally not like this, or I don't know what's gotten over me. And the thing is, like, you're told, like, toughen up or be a man or whatever the case may be. But the truth is, here's my question to that. Like, what is being tough? Isn't being tough doing the things that are hard for you? If opening up is hard for you, then by opening up, you are being tough, are you not?
Yes, absolutely.
So it's so important to feel. And unfortunately, we're in a society where there are so many ways to suppress. There's obviously the drugs and the alcohol, but it's not just that. There's food, right? There's there's this little guy that's in our pockets all the time with various ways to distract us, social media, games, whatever, right? Netflix binges. I mean, the list goes on. But the truth is, yes, can you do a little bit of that as a escape or that sort of thing in a healthy manner? Sure, everything. And nothing is evil, right? It's all in moderation. But you have to understand that at some point you have to process that. And if you do, and it's not going to be comfortable, it's not going to be fun, it's not going to be easy, but when you do, on the other side of that grieving is an extraordinary life.
Yeah.
And sometimes it just takes going through it once to start to believe, oh, maybe I should. Because I think we talked about this when I was live on your channel, but you know, in my teenage years, went through depression. That felt like the end of the world for those years. And I came out of it. It was this, oh my goodness, things can turn around. The second time that happened was still kind of half caught in it. Didn't believe there was a way out. And then life turned around. Life changed completely. I lost 100 pounds, moved across the country, became a doctor, met the love of my life. And then last year went through, the third lull. But this time when I was going through it, I said, I'm just going to experience it. I know how this ends because there's always a brighter day. But like we talked about, when it hurts enough, you take action. And, at some point you grieve, let the hurt create more action for you. But ultimately, I would like to know, what are your tips then for creating that life without regret?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I wanted to share something real quick based on what you were saying. When that person was crying in front of you and said, I'm sorry, I'm not normally like this. On the one hand, I know what he meant by that. I can assume I know what he meant by that in terms of just like in his mind, the breakdown. But in reality, think of it as, I'm not normally like this. But in that moment when they're crying, they're being authentic. They're being real. Like this is what they're feeling. And when they say I'm not normally like this, hopefully they don't mean I'm not normally authentic. I'm not normally sharing the vulnerable side of me. I'm not normally being real. Normally I hold it together. Like think about what that like entails, like that connotation. It's like the floodgates are trying to break out and you're like holding it in and you think it's a good thing. And the thing is, that is part of what's causing the pain. And I find that when people go through that grieving process, it's like, how do you know, let's say, when you're there, when you feel at peace? And the thing is, it might take a while. It might take years. It depends on the individual. And you might not find that. When I say peace, it doesn't mean like you're glad it happened. Peace as in it happened and it's not happening now. And from this place, you've accepted what happened. You found the beauty in what you did have, and you're doing the best you can, going forward. And so I find that that's that key place to get to. When you're at peace, we've all been through stuff. We all have our hardships, and some of us tremendously worse, apparently, seemingly, than others. I know Viktor Frankl, he wrote Man's Search for Meaning, Holocaust survivor. And you read the book, and he's going into detail on this account of daily life, of what it looks like. And you read that, and you get this feeling of, I don't have problems. You get this feeling of he went through that, and yet he somehow maintained this positive outlook on life. He somehow maintained, I'm at a loss for words, like whatever he maintained that kept him alive. And you look at your life and you say, well, what can I do about this? Because there's always something we can do, and taking that one day at a time. And then, to your question, what's something we can do to create an extraordinary life without regret? I think the first step always is you need to have a commitment to be real with yourself. So many people that I've met and that I see online, they wear a mask. And this mask is, this is who I think I need to be for you to accept me. This is who I need to be loved. This is who I need to be validated, all these things. They're not consciously thinking this. This is something that they have been wearing a long time. And so this mask that they're wearing, this character that they're playing, you know, this, like, I'm the funny guy, I'm this guy, I'm this kind of girl, and I have to maintain that reputation. Otherwise, I lose it, and that's my identity. And we identify as it. So step one is you need to get real with you of what do you want out of your life? And where are you right now? It doesn't matter where you are. And you might say, oh, I'm too old. There's people saying they're too young. You know, it's not a matter of being old or young. It's a matter of you're alive and you're listening to this, you have time. And so from that perspective, what do you want to give? What do you want to create in your life at this stage of your life? You might want to create something now if you're young, and 10 years from now, it might be different. 10 days from now, it might be different. But what do you want to create right now? How do you want to treat people? What kind of energy do you want to bring out? What experiences do you want to have? Get as clear as you possibly can on the what it is you want to do. And once you have that, I feel like you have a really strong foundational map. It's like, okay, this is what I want to do because this is what excites me. This is what I want to do because this feels great to talk about. And I think about it. I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait to do that. Not, this is what my mom wants me to do. This is what my dad wants me to do. This is what's expected of me. I can't do that even though I want to, because what would people think? You know, ditching all that and getting real clear on you. And I think that's step one. And then after that, it's getting clear on why you want it, getting emotional about it. I just had a client I spoke to the other day, this idea of, it's like, tell me what you want to do, and then you tell me, but the way you said it, without meaning to, was completely cerebral. It was all intellect. There was no heart. You said it as if you were like reading the newspaper. Like, you know, there was no oomph behind why you seem to want it. And then we get real clear on why it's important, why it matters. What would that do for you? What would that add to your life? How would that help your family? Well, you know, all these things. And now the person starts maybe crying or getting emotional because it's important. And now you have the emotional drive that gives you the oomph, that gives you that push that you need to overcome what other people think about me. Because when you realize that you're going to die, when you realize that everything goes, but you realize you have this moment, you see the miracle of the day. And when you see that miracle and you see, all right, I don't know how much time I have left, but I do know there's, 10 things I want to do in the next month. I do know that I want to get these done as quickly as I can and have as many wonderful experiences as I can. And they're important for all these reasons. Now I know what I want. I know why I want it. And then you just commit to doing it. I like to tell people movement leads to momentum. When you get started, it happens. The ball starts rolling, that snowball effect of it's small and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger as it goes down the mountain. Oh, that was pretty cool on the screen. And so I think that, for now is, it sounds basic to people, but if I were to ask you, do you know what you want? And you might say, yeah, of course I do. Or you might give me a vague answer because I find most people don't. But let's say you say, yeah, I know what I want to do. So why aren't you doing it? And then you're going to give me reasons. And the reasons you give me are the proof of why you don't want it bad enough. You are not tuned into why you want it. And because you're not tuned into that, you're allowing things to stop you. Yeah. And almost always, sometimes it's a legitimate reason why you can't do it. Most of the time, it's an excuse that you make up in your mind that holds you back. And when we recognize that and we really own it, I told you there's a commitment that we need to be real with ourselves. Sometimes you can't be your friend. Like sometimes you got to be the drill sergeant. Sometimes you need to be this is what we need to do because we're just sitting there sulking in our own stuff and we're wasting our life. And there's so much magic that's there, possibilities, but we're living in limitations, so we don't see it.
There's a couple of things I want to add to that was extraordinary. When you say, sometimes you need to be your drill sergeant, it's true. Like actually the first question I ask my clients when we start working together is, what do you want? And then they'll give me an answer. And my next thing is, okay, what do you really want? And that it's either met with, wait, what? What does that mean? Or, dude, I don't know. And the truth is, like you said, if you really do want something bad enough, at some point, people, your other people's opinion ceases to matter, And the thing that I'd like to add to that is we walk around this world worrying about what other people think.
Mm-hmm.
But you stop for a moment and realize that all those people whose opinions you're worried about, they're worried what you think of them.
Yep.
They're
I'm
worried
living
about what
proof.
you think of them. So what is this, right? Why don't you get to be the person that breaks that cycle and say, you know what? This is me. I am me. I accept my past. I accept who I am. I'm going to be me to the best of my ability and figure it out. Figure out what your message is, what your purpose is in this world. I believe we all have a purpose here. That's fundamentally, that's why I do what I do, right? I think you do as well. Helping people live an extraordinary life is helping them find their purpose, right?
Yeah.
And but going back to the drill sergeant part of it, I think this is a issue that I had for the longest time, was when I was drowning in self-criticism before I did the EMDR, before I really processed the events of my past that led me to be so deeply, intensely self-critical. I would say I would almost use that drill sergeant technique as an excuse to be hard on myself for no reason. So there's a difference between being critical without motive other than just to beat yourself up versus
Absolutely.
being honest, like brutally honest, to say, hey, you know what? I'm overweight right now. Or I don't like the way this relationship's going. Or, you know what? This job stinks. Whatever it is for you, there's a way to word that, to phrase that, to feel that, that is brutally honest and not self-critical. Because describe the situation, not yourself, right? If you say
Absolutely.
this versus, it's the difference between saying, um, I'm currently in a job that I don't enjoy versus I'm an idiot for still sticking around here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, you're not an idiot. However, you're in a job that you don't enjoy. Might want to do something about it.
Yeah.
Those are really extraordinary. And, for me, as far as living without regret, honestly, the one thing that drives me in life is waking up 87 years old, looking back on my life and saying, oh, wow, I really blew that. There was a lot of things I could have done, a
Yeah.
lot of things I wanted to do. Why am I going to do it now?
Yeah.
And that scares me. That scares me more than other people's opinions. That scares me more than my current discomfort. That scares me more than anything. That, like you said, like you've experienced in your life, you don't know when that last day is. You don't know when that last day. I'm going to share something now that I don't even know if I've told my wife. But every time, we got married in December, and I think the longer, the more time goes, the more afraid I am every time she drives somewhere, I drive somewhere, whatever, right? Because like you said, we can be prepared from a eat well, exercise, whatever, prevent chronic disease. You can't prevent car accidents or whatnot. So I'm always afraid, when she's driving somewhere, and I just say a little prayer. But I always feel like, okay, in those moments, I take it as an opportunity to say, God forbid this ended. Would I regret? And as long as you can say on any given day, if any given day was your last, or any given day with somebody that you love was your last with them, if you could say honestly that, okay, this is painful, this sucks, all those things, but would I have done anything differently? If your answer is no, then you are living life to your fullest.
Well said, man. That is beautiful. And I am right there with you. I agree completely. And I think that one way somebody is going to be able to know if it's like the right move for them, what's your heart telling you? It's like, listen to your heart. It doesn't mean, and I want to make a quick preface with the drill sergeant thing. I agree with you. When I said that, I didn't mean it in this drill sergeant just criticizing and shaming you. I meant it, as you said, being honest. And it's like, look, you're doing whatever you're doing. You chose that, but let's acknowledge that, and let's be real that whatever you're doing right now, you're choosing to do this. And if you're going to make a change, these are the options. And so, going back to following your heart, often, like, I have this quote that I came up with that I really liked. This idea that when your heart speaks, that's you. When your head speaks, that's who other people told you you're supposed to be.
Ooh, wow. Oh, that's good.
I thought that when it came to my head, I was like, I got to write that down.
That is really good.
Yeah. And that to me is really what it's all about. If you find someone who has a lot of regret, when they ask that question that you posed, if today was your last day, would you have regret? Everyone who says yes, it's because they weren't in line with their heart. It's because they weren't living a life in alignment with their truth. Whether it be, I feel this way about this person, but I'm not telling them emotionally. I'm not showing it emotionally. Or I have this dream that excites my spirit, that excites my heart, and I'm not doing it because I'm convincing myself all the reasons why I shouldn't. I'm telling myself all the what ifs. What if it doesn't work out? And I like to flip that and say, what if it does? And to me, it's like, if I say, what if it does work out? And then I talk about in my mind all of the positives. What's going to come from this? What would my life be like if I tried this thing that I'm afraid to do and it worked out? And it was like, that would be so exciting. And then I think, what's the alternative? If I didn't do it, and then I go to bed, and then like tomorrow's another day, and I have in my mind, oh yeah, that's something I want to do, but I'm not good enough for that. Well, then life just continues to be average and mediocre, and I'm not living. I'm just existing. And so when you realize that it's not even a choice, you just go all into the heart because you go, that's not worth it. It's the 87-year-old looking back that's scaring the crap out of you. It's the same thing. And so it's such a powerful way to look at things, in my opinion.
It's so powerful. And really, I think if we're really honest, all of us, especially if we've been on this earth for a little while, if we look back and say, has there been something that I did follow my heart and like, oh my God, thank God I did, right? Those are some of the best decisions we've ever made. I mean, the one that comes to my mind is, my wife comes from a very devout Christian family. I come from a very devout Hindu family. It could never work. That was my story for the longest time. Like, I was looking for somebody that was also Hindu and all that. And she came into my life. And at first I was like, you don't fit the mental picture. Right. But I couldn't deny just how complimentary this person was for me. Right. But I had all this fear over, how am I going to tell my parents? How am I going to be accepted by her parents, her family? Like, what about the cultural differences? Can we overcome that? And it was a major source of anguish, really. But my heart was so powerfully just in love with her that I was like, yeah, figure out what you need to do, but you have to make this happen.
Yeah.
And guess what? Usually it's not that bad, right? And it wasn't that bad. And our families love each other. Like, we had an outstanding wedding and everything's, it's like, but you have to know, like, if I had gone with my head and I was like, you know what, 31 years, whatever, I went with my head, got me nowhere from a romantic standpoint, right?
Yeah.
Why don't I just go with my heart for once? Oh, best decision I've ever made my whole life. I don't think I will make a better decision than that, than to accept her into my life, and it's, you have to really be honest with yourself about, what life do you want to live? Do you want to live life on other people's terms? That is going to lead to a whole lot of regret. Yeah. But if you do it your way, if you follow your heart, even if you fail, at least you did it your way.
Yeah.
Can't regret that.
And this idea that, if you follow your heart and you really go after what you want, does that mean it's going to be easy? No. Does that mean you won't face criticism? Oh, no, you will. Because every time whenever you step into your truth, your greatness, your heart, and you start living and shining and being your best self, you now represent to other people what they're not doing. And
Yeah,
so all of a
absolutely.
sudden, there's two options that people have. I can look at you shining and being your best self and use that as a example to me of, wow, like they're doing it. Dr. K is like shining. He's doing so great. He represents the possibility of what I can do for me. I'm going to do this too. And now there's two shining people on the street. That'd be wonderful. Most people don't do that. Most people look at it as, I'm the way I am. Most of the people I know are like similar. And now here's this guy or here's this girl, and they're kind of weird. They're kind of doing their own thing. They're going outside the box to follow in their heart. And because they're afraid to do it, rather than them breaking out of their comfort zone and doing it, they tear you down. Usually it's not coming from a malicious place. It's more of a defense mechanism. It's like a protection mechanism for them.
It is.
And
Yeah.
they're going to give you a hard time. Like I had that, for many people in my life, they're going to give you a hard time. And the funny thing is they could still love you. It's just they're giving you this hard time. They're not really supporting you and they're criticizing you. And you're sitting there going, maybe I'm doing it wrong. Like maybe I shouldn't do this. But it really comes back to.
Have you gotten the one like, wait, you went to 4 years of medical school and, $250,000 in debt and you're like a motivational speaker or something?
Yeah, no, I tell people, I went to med school to be a coach.
Right.
But this, I do what I can, as you do, to incorporate, into everything. But when it comes to, the people that are going to criticize you, I know from my perspective and my experience, I had a lot of criticism from people that deeply cared about me because they're not me. And people who are criticizing you aren't you. They don't have your dream. One of my mentors, Les Brown, would always say, if people don't see your dream, it wasn't given to them, it was given to you. And this similar idea of the people that were criticizing me for going down my path years ago, the one I chose like 6, 7, 8 years ago, they didn't see what I saw for my future. And because of that, they were afraid for me. Now, I love them for that. Even though they were criticizing me, it's beyond the words. The intention was great. The key is this. Is this what my heart wants to do? And then you ask yourself a really simple question. Just like when you said in the beginning, what do you want? And then what do you really want? A similar question that most people never get asked. Are you happy? And you just ask that question. And happy doesn't necessarily mean you're just giddy and jumping out of your seat. And you're not going to feel that all the time. But the thing is, you're not going to feel anything all the time. But the thing is, are you happy? Whatever that means to you, are you that? And if you're living from your life purpose, your choice, you're living the life that you created, doesn't mean there's not financial struggles. It doesn't mean you don't have to work another job on the side while you build up your thing. There's so many things it could mean. But are you at peace with you? Are you happy with the decisions you've made because you're building your story the way you want it to be written? And if the answer is yes, then you're doing it right. And don't listen to anybody. But if the answer is no, that's where that drill sergeant comes in. That's where why aren't you doing that? What are the reasons? And let's go through each one and find the truth. Because most of us, the truth is scary to a lot of people. But as it said, the truth shall set you free.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm going to start to land the plane here. Don in the chat says, live like you are dying instead of existing like you are dying. That's pretty awesome, right?
Absolutely.
And Keith asks, how do you balance your desires and passions with your obligations and responsibilities?
Okay. So everyone is in a different situation. There's somebody listening to this who's a single mom who's got 4 kids and they're all under 10. And there's someone else listening to this who's a 18-year-old bachelor who's sitting in their apartment alone. And there's someone else who's a 65-year-old woman who's in whatever her situation is. So we're all different. We all have our obligations. And if it's really an obligation, and I stress that word really, because there are some things that you think, I have to do these things. And you actually don't. And if you did look into it, you've convinced yourself of things you need to do, but they're not actually that important. Some things, obviously, we all have our obligations. You have your family, you have kids, you have whatever it is, you have your work. Figure out what's actually an obligation. and then do it to the best of your ability. But again, figure out, let's say it's work. Oh, my obligation is my job. But do you enjoy your job or do you hate your job? If you hate it and you need the job to pay the bills, all right, do the job to the best of your ability, but start building something on the side that you do like so you can transition out of it. When you know what your passions are and you know what your obligations and responsibilities are, your passion might be a hobby. And if that's the case, schedule it into your week so you actually get time to do it and enjoy yourself in that way, doing what you're passionate about. And then whatever your responsibilities and obligations are, again, make sure that they're for you to do. It's not something that can be delegated if it's a work thing, or if it's a family thing, maybe change the way you look at it. For example, if you have kids and you're looking at them as they're my obligation and they're my responsibility, true, but you can enjoy that process. Like there's a way that you can look at it in a different way that isn't a drag. And so I think, again, I'm speaking very generally because it was a general question, but also I don't know this person's specific situation. So my answer is going to be different to everybody who's asking me that question because it's going to be specific to them. But in general, get really clear on what those obligations and responsibilities are. If you don't have to do them, great. If you do, have fun with it. Make the best out of it. And then find your passion, schedule it into your life. If you can make your passion your job, even better. And if you can't, still do it. And I hope that's sufficient because it's so pretty big.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, one question I have for you is, you know, we're here talking about things. We've got perspective. We've got a degree, whatever, all these things, right? But we're people and we have our own challenges. What's one challenge that you face to this day?
I think something that came up for me earlier today, I was speaking to one of my coaches and this challenge came up for me that thankfully it comes up less and less, but it definitely still rears its head every now and then. And it's undervaluing myself. And there's this idea of, you know, I've been coaching for 14 years, going on 15 years now. And I did it for free for 12 and a half years. It was just heart. It was just, I love people. And I just wanted to see people lit up and living their best life. And then it got to a point where I turned it into a business. And one of my mentors told me, you've been doing this for so long. Your biggest challenge is you're not going to feel comfortable charging people. And he was spot on. And I was terrified to charge, you know, pennies basically. And I just want to help people. It's the story that I was like in my head. And I wasn't realizing that the people that started to pay were getting 10 to 100 times more than they were investing, without exaggeration. And I realized that I had all these people around me that were charging more, but it's not like a greed thing. When you charge more and you value yourself more, people value you more. And when they value you more, they take it more intentionally, they take more responsibility, and they commit more to whatever it is. If it's a relationship or if it's a business, if I invest in you, whether it be money, time, energy, whatever it is, and I really invest it, I'm going to value our time together. I'm going to prioritize our time together. But if I'm paying you, you know, what I think is basically nothing, I'm going to miss sessions. I'm not going to show up on time. I'm going to not do the work. And I experienced that. And I got really frustrated over and over and over again. And then I started to value what I did and really own, you know, what I bring. And again, today I fell into a little bit of it in a call this morning with my coach. But in general, I think we each have tendencies at times to undervalue what we do and who we are and what we bring to the table. And especially when it's something as your career or your relationship. If you show up from a place of authenticity and strength and really being you, then if it's a relationship, your partner is going to be attracted to that. But if you don't value yourself and you come across as needy, that isn't attractive. And then you end up losing the relationship. If it's in a business and you don't value what you do, well, your customers won't either. And so all of a sudden you fall into this negative spiral. And when I fell into that, I would get frustrated and frustrated and frustrated. And then I'd raise my price and people started getting better results. They were taking me more seriously. And I was just like, it's really that easy? Right. But just learning that lesson.
I think actually for my audience, a good cross section of it is actually entrepreneurs like us. So I think that's a very valuable insight, not just from a personal development standpoint, but also from that business standpoint. One thing I'll add to that is, uh, what did it cost you to become as good at what you do as you are? Like, what did it cost you? How much time? How much money? How many heartaches? How many? You can't, Dr. Jamil, you can't put a price on what it cost you to become who you are.
Yeah.
You lost your father, right? And 3 years of the
Hell.
beautiful pain at the same time, And how do nobody, you can't put a price on that, right? So you do the best you can, obviously, with your rates and whatnot. But if you start to think about what did you go through to become the expert that you are, it becomes a whole lot easier to just say, this is who I am. This is what I went through. This is what I do. This is what I offer. If you feel that I am a good fit for you, I feel you're a good fit for me, let's work. Let's do this. But ultimately, I think just that framework of thinking about what did it cost you has really helped me overcome the undervaluing myself, because certainly in the beginning it's easy to say, hey, I could really use some momentum and a little bit of business, but ultimately, you know you want them to have good results too.
What you just said, if I may add, the whole what did it cost you? When I had that realization and I dove into it and I wanted to see, however close I could get to the approximation, what did I put into the last 14 years of my life? And, I remember one of the books it's blanking on the author's name, Gladwell,
Malcolm
something
Gladwell.
Gladwell. What was it?
Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah. He has that 10,000 hour rule. And this idea that if you do something for 10,000 hours, you achieve mastery. I've spent on average 6 to 10 hours a day for 14 years honing my craft and doing my craft. And if I low end it at 6 hours, 6 to 7 or so, it comes to over 35,000 hours that I have put in the last 14 years. That's not including medical school, the time I spent there. That's not including the money of medical school, the books read, and the life experiences, like you said, with my dad and everything else since then. And we all have our own experiences similar in what we've put into it. And when we recognize that, to me, like that, thank you for the reminder, because that's all I need to hear to snap me out of that. And it's easy to forget. And so for anyone who is listening, Dr. K's question is an excellent one to ask yourself. What did you put into this?
Well, I'm glad I could offer you something, because you've offered our viewers here quite a bit of wisdom. And well, I'll just leave you with this. If there are any closing thoughts that you want to share.
Oh, really just thank you so much for having me. It's really been a pleasure and an honor and a privilege. And yeah, I mean, I'd love to do it again sometime, and just any way I can give back to people, I'd be happy to.
Oh, absolutely. We'll definitely be having more conversations. I think we determined that when I was on your stream, but where can people find you?
All right. So thank you so much. So first and foremost, it's my website. It's jamilsayegh.com, JamilSayegh. We'll probably have the link somewhere. And then on my Instagram, it's at Dr. Jamil Sayegh, and my Facebook, you can just type in my name. And on there, over the last 3 years, I've put out, about 400 videos, blog posts, all these things, all free for people to just get as much value as possible and just turn their day around. These videos are short. Most of them are a minute, because there's no excuse. It's a minute. You can watch it at any point. You're driving, you're in the bathroom, you're getting ready for work, whatever it is, it's 1 minute. And it's something that the thought plants a seed, changes your whole day. And if you are interested in working together, this resonated with you, get on the website, you'll find a form you can fill out and apply. And if we're a fit, that'd be wonderful. And I'd love to have you.
Awesome. Yeah, actually, if you go to his Instagram, you just scroll down and just pick a random video. Doesn't matter the topic, just random video. You'll probably find something extraordinarily useful and insightful. Dr. Jamil, he was, you talking about, making those videos. He was making consistent daily videos while in medical school. And I can tell you how incredibly difficult that is. And then I didn't think he was going to keep it up while he was president of student government, because I had that job. And a couple of years later, he took over and was like, but he's really an example of doing it anyway and doing it, because of the passion, and he never lets anything drag him down, or at least keep him there. So, yeah, definitely. I will put his links down in the description, and it's definitely worth a follow. He's somebody that I learn a lot from and get a lot of inspiration from. So I think you'll enjoy his work as well.
Thank you so much, man. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining. And until next time, I believe in your greatness. Take care.
Me too.